and welcome to this episode of People Are Animals Too, darn it. I'm your host, Mandy Evans, and today I have Cameron Moore from the Million Cat Challenge joining me. Welcome, Cameron.
So good to be here.
So can you just start out by letting everybody know who you are and what you do?
You bet. So I'm Cameron Moore. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I work for the Million Cat Challenge, which is totally amazing because who would have ever thought you could get paid to talk about cats all the time? It's a dream come true for sure. I started out in animal welfare as a volunteer and then started a nonprofit cat rescue, and then somehow lucked into a job in animal welfare, a paying job, and worked at a high volume spay-neuter clinic whose mission was ending euthanasia in our shelter. Our town at the time had a very sad save rate for dogs and cats, but cats especially. And we did some really neat things over the years, which has helped me be in the position where I am today.
Tell us a little bit more about what the Million Cat Challenge is. I have to tell you that when it was first introduced to me, I had a button on, the Million Cat Challenge button, and I wore it to the grocery store. It was on my lanyard or something. And someone asked me and said, "What is that?" And I'm like, what do I say? Like, we want a million cats to not enter into a shelter. Like, how do I appropriately put this to the general public?
Sure.
So,
and it's even hard for me to try to get it really succinct, but basically, cats have it really rough in shelters compared with dogs. That's just traditional everywhere across the country. And so two really brilliant minds came together, Dr. Kate Hurley and Dr. Julie Levy, and decided, what can we do to empower both shelters, rescues, and just individual people to help cats? So their goal was pretty lofty. They said, we want to help shelters save 1 million more cats than what is already being saved. And they thought it would take 5 years. And they came up with initiatives and invited shelters and rescues to join and empowered them to just try something, try one, try all. And they actually achieved the goal in 4 years. So 1 million more cats were saved than from the baseline in 2012. So then they decided, well, let's shoot for another million. And how long is that going to take? And that only took a year. So in 4 years, they saved 1 million, and then 1 more year, they doubled it. So now our goal is just save all the cats that we can.
okay, so you said that cats have it rough in shelters, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on what that means.
Sure. Well, traditionally, when animal control facilities and shelters were created, they were originally created for dogs. It was for rabies protection and, protecting people from dangerous animals and animals from dangerous people. But it was all dog focused. And then cats were an afterthought. Like, oh, hey, we have this closet over here. Let's just warehouse some cats in it. They get no attention. Meanwhile, the dogs get walked and they get played with and they have toys and they get bathed and everybody's focused on the dogs. So not surprisingly, dogs are usually saved at a much higher rate than cats. And that's actually how I got involved in cat rescue and just in animal welfare in general, because I felt so bad for these cats that were basically being ignored and then euthanized at a much higher rate in shelters everywhere.
I started in animal welfare, it's been 9.5 years ago. And there were these 2 volunteers who would come to me and they'd say, you really don't care that much about cats. You're not doing much for cats. And I really didn't understand what they meant by that. And then our cat rooms, we have mainly community cat rooms, and we always had just snot everywhere on the windows. That was one of the main jobs. And we would put enzymes on the food and all of these things to try to make our cats healthier. And it really wasn't until we were able to work with Dr. Newberry. And so I think that shelters in general have the best interests at heart. They want to do everything they can. And there is definitely complexities around dogs, but there is a lot of complexity around cats. I mean, the F diseases on their own, it's like having to learn physics. So really, there's just an information gap out there on how to properly care for cats versus dogs that seem to have a little bit more. And as you said, like the industry kind of was set up more for dogs. So I appreciate that what you guys are doing, and I wanted to give some statistics. So last year, around 625,000 dogs and cats were killed in America's shelters. Despite the fact that more dogs entered the shelters, nearly 70% of pets killed were actually cats. That's 2 cats for every dog. So why is that happening?
Well, that's a pretty easy answer too. But first we need to back up and think about how our society lives with cats and dogs. Dogs are traditionally kept inside. They're part of our family, and we don't allow them to free roam because of their own safety. Cats, on the other hand, what we've learned is about 50% of Americans let their cats outside. They don't think anything about it, right? My cat enjoys fresh air. He always hangs around the house. I'm not worried about him. Things are fine. But our human brains, we've been trained that if we see a stray animal, we should pick it up and take it to an animal shelter. But the thing is, when we don't have the answer to something like, hey cat, who do you belong to? We make up a story, and I'm guilty of this myself. I would find a very nice cat out on a walk, and it would rub up against my leg, and I'd say, oh my gosh, you are stray. You must be lost, and I need to save your life. Meanwhile, this cat's 10 pounds, it's healthy. She's like, look, lady, I'm just being friendly. Like, I just wanted to say hi. Now you're gonna kidnap me and take me miles and miles away to a shelter where traditionally only 2% of the cats get reunited with their owners. Why have we taught people to do this? I don't understand it. Even today, I know people have good intentions, but we just want to share the message that most cats don't need our help. There are some that do, and it's easy to identify, if you're sick, if you're injured, if you look like you're having a hard time. But these friendly cats that are big and healthy, they really don't need us. They do need to be sterilized, and so we want to help them with that. But taking them to the shelter is not in their best interest. And so then what happens is cats go into a shelter. Cat owners don't think to look in the shelter. Most people don't even know their town has a shelter because it's not in their everyday realm, right? We all live in a bubble. We, have things that we're familiar with, and shelters just aren't the thing that pops to mind. Now, when you're a dog owner and you've lost your dog, heck yeah, there's a shelter, and you call them immediately and you want to get your dog back right away. But with cats, you're like, how long have you been missing? Didn't I see you this morning? Was that yesterday morning? I don't remember. By the time they usually learn about the shelter, it's too late. Like, the stray hold is up, the cat has most likely been euthanized, or if it's lucky, adopted out to someone else, in which case they're never getting it back. So, and then again, because we're bringing in so many cats into shelters, we're overwhelming the shelters. And, and then, as you know, overcrowding leads to illness, which then leads to euthanasia. It's just a rough cycle.
Yeah, and cats are really sensitive. So they have they're more susceptible to stress leading to illness. So one of the arguments that I've heard, because our shelter is, we don't euthanize for space, right? So then, people who are huge cat advocates will say, wait a minute, you don't euthanize for space. This cat was free roaming. It's just outside. It's sweet, or it keeps coming to my house. I love it. I can't take care of it, but obviously it needs me because it keeps coming to my house. I'm going to bring it in. And that cat isn't really in danger of being euthanized. So can you explain why it's still not a good idea for that cat to enter a shelter, even if it isn't at risk of euthanasia?
Sure, because the cat has an owner. He probably has 4 owners. Each one of those people who are taking care of this cat think they're the only ones taking care of their cat. I've lived in my current house for about 10 years. I have cats that live on my porch. They do not want to come inside, even during hurricanes. I drag them in, they climb the walls to get out. They're nice, they're friendly. They are also social butterflies. They visit like all the right neighbors, okay? They don't go to the cat hating neighbors. They go to the cat loving neighbors, and then they cry like, I'm hungry, my mom doesn't feed me. And so again, people think, you're nice, I'm the only one who's feeding you, I need to save your life. But I've been taking care of this cat for 10 years. Like, the cat is fine. He has a home. And in fact, other people in my neighborhood, they all think that's their cat too. And so even in shelters where they say, but we'll find him a great home. He had a great home. You just didn't know who it was. And ironically, just this past week, that very same thing happened, where in an apartment complex, there was a girl that had been caring for a cat. She even made an appointment to get him neutered. Another lady was feeding the cat too, but she thought, this cat's so sweet, but nobody owns him. And then the management of the apartment complex actually rounded up cats and took them to the shelter. That shelter did not have a return to field program. The cat sat for 5 days. Nobody came for him, obviously. I mean, like, it's just, that's common. He was transferred to my rescue organization because in that shelter, their only option is reclaim or transfer to rescue. I got him neutered, vaccinated. We were about to put him up for adoption, and the girl in the apartment complex like tracked him down, found out through a friend of a friend of a friend who actually saved this cat. And she's like, that's my cat. And so she drove 220 miles round trip to retrieve her cat. But she, you know, this cat is one of the lucky 2% that get reunited. And honestly, it probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. Like, it was just fate that she was reunited with him. But I want to share with you, like, for example, with my porch cats, I have 3 porch cats right now who have come home with collars. Okay, not my collars. I didn't put them on. One's wearing a Seresto collar, which is, you know, like a $60 7-month flea collar. I didn't buy it for them. 2 others have like these little cute collars with bells. I've had cats come home with like name tags and phone numbers on them. And I'm like, hey, congratulations, buddy. Glad you got yourself adopted. And I have neighbors that'll walk down the street and see me and be like, sorry, my cat's on your porch. I'm like, not your cat, that's my cat. But again, like, I know I wasn't raised that way. I was raised where all cats stay inside. You never let your cat outside. And so that's what I knew, right? So people who let their cat out were bad. And so when I first started doing adoptions, I'm like, inside only, you know, you're awful if you let your cat outside. And then people would come back later who had adopted and be like, here's my cat outside, look at his picture. And I'd be like, ah. And then finally I had to realize, like, get over yourself. People are going to do what they're going to do, right? And so you just have to tell them, like, inside is safest. But, you know, these cats, they some of them like to be outside. Some of them don't want to be inside. Some of them don't want to use a litter box. I mean, even for my porch cats, I put a litter box out there so that they don't go into the bathroom in people's yards. They're just like, litter box? We're not using that, you know? So, so I've had to finally like get over myself and be like, look, cats aren't going to be the way you want them to be. Like, you have to figure out what they want, kind of thing.
One of the things that is a protocol that shelters use to eliminate the need to euthanize for space is to remove the stray hold time frame for cats because the reclaim rate is so low. So it is possible that your cat ends up in the shelter and it is immediately put on the adoption floor or spayed or neutered and put on the adoption floor. And they do this, like, some people will say, oh, that shelter, that's not right. They don't care about cats. That's not right. There should be a stray hold. But what the piece that's missing is understanding that that cat only had a 2% chance of being reclaimed. The longer it sits in a kennel, the higher the risk of it getting sick and just the stress in general that can cause issues with the cat. If it does get sick, it's at risk of euthanasia. It's at risk of having to stay in a shelter a lot longer than necessary to recover. So shelters make the best decision they can off of data and knowing that owners aren't coming in to pick up their pets and they're trying to move them out of the system as fast as possible. And I think that cats become, for shelters, a lot more complicated than dogs. Like, there's just a lot more factors. And unfortunately, all of those factors that lead to best outcomes for cats can sometimes be looked at as us not caring about cats.
Well, and I think what we really need to refocus with shelters and rescue organizations is, does this animal truly need to be here in the first place? I feel like in a way we've almost glorified homelessness. Bring us everyone, we will take them and we will care for them because we are the rescues and we're the ones who have the ability to save them. When in reality, most of them didn't need to be saved. So what I would hope is that organizations would, would start changing the message in their town, that just because you're a cat outside doesn't mean that you need help. It doesn't mean that you need to come to a shelter. And what I would like is if shelters start thinking more of safety net programs and how can I help you and help this cat, and does it need to be here? Now, if it is sick, if it is injured, if it was left behind in an eviction, those are totally different situations. But when you're just my new neighbor who moved in and my piggy cat came down to, bum a meal off of you and you think you need to save their life and take them to the shelters need to say, hey, no, go back home. That cat has people caring for it and you can just feel comfortable, returning the cat. I think what happens though is we as people feel like, well, we don't want anything bad to happen and we don't want them to starve. And since we're not taking care of them, no one else must be taking care of them, right? And often like on Nextdoor app for your neighborhood, I'm always trying to help educate my neighbors, like, hey, just because he came over and wanted a meal doesn't mean he's starving. That's just, he's a cat and he likes to eat 10 times a day. So again, like I think we should reserve our shelter space for those who truly need it. And if they do come into a shelter, we do want to get them out as quickly as possible. And the intention of the stray hold was to reunite pets with their owners. But if the data shows that it's not working, again, why keep doing it? It's like beating your head against the wall. It still isn't working. We're failing 98% of the time. So why keep doing it that way?
So you mentioned safety net programs. Can you explain specifically SNR, maybe touch on what TNR does for communities, just the different programs that shelters can initiate to solve some of these cat challenges? Sure.
So in every community, whether people know it or not, there are cats outside reproducing like wildfire. And for the most part, they are very healthy. And so that's why they're able to just keep going. We always have this perception that outdoor cats are sickly, and yet in all the communities that are practicing TNR and return to field or SNR, they're finding out that that is totally not the truth. So TNR, trap, neuter, and return, is something that is encouraged by individual citizens in a community. If you come across an outdoor cat and it doesn't have the ear tip, which signifies that they've been sterilized, you would trap that cat humanely, take it to a local spay-neuter clinic, get it sterilized and vaccinated, ear tip to, again, so that everybody can visually see, you're already taken care of, I don't have to worry about you, and then taken right back to where they were found. Again, you don't even have to know who's caring for them because the cat knows who's caring for them. And then for cats that enter a shelter that come from outside, if shelters are going to take them in, we want them to practice shelter, neuter, return. So the cat has been brought to them. The shelter says you came from outside, you're otherwise healthy, we know where you were picked up from, we are going to sterilize, vaccinate, ear tip you, and take you back to where you came from. And then, of course, with all the kittens, we would hope the more you spay and neuter, the less kittens you're going to have. That's a given. But for kittens that are already out there, we do want to provide extra help for them and get them on a path to adoption. but that doesn't always mean coming into a shelter. Because remember, when you're a shelter and you have limited space and limited staff, how many kittens can you really care for and keep them healthy? Wouldn't it be better for every individual who finds these kittens that we support them and they take care of the kittens at their house where they don't have hundreds of other cats in their shelter? And we support them with medical care and then ultimately adoption outlets, and people will be your partner. And so rather than just depending on your tiny little hardworking staff, however big they are, use your whole community, which is always more than you can put on your payroll.
I think that's an important message, because traditionally shelters haven't really been all that great about empowering their community. They've felt like they've had to be kind of the be all end all. We've come at animal welfare from a standpoint that our community is somehow not good enough to help. Like they don't know what to do. And we're learning more and more about the power. There's just like this amazing gift of empowering our community to be trusted partners, and the impact that has. And what through COVID, what we've seen and heard from shelters is they're absolutely shocked that when they empower their community, that all of a sudden these people step up and they want to be a part of the solution. But it really takes shelters taking that step back and saying, you know what, I'm going to trust you, and it's okay, because we've been just built in it's really changing an entire cultural system to say that people are really good. We need to trust people.
And really, I think that is the silver lining of this pandemic that we're in, is that shelters have been forced into doing the right thing, right? So we've been telling shelters and trying to educate nonprofits and rescue groups to do this, and they're all just like, nope, we're the only ones that can do this. People are bad. And I think COVID has proved them wrong. And it's wonderful, but at the same time, I want to shake people and say, I've been telling you this forever. But again, I went through my same transformation. And I think it's something that you just kind of learn, sadly, through your mentors and through other volunteers, is that we are the only ones that can save them. Everyone else, you can't trust them. That's why we have to make people jump through hoops. And when I first started out with my nonprofit rescue, I was caring for way too many cats and kittens, but I felt like I was the only one who could properly medicate them and clean their litter boxes and provide them time. And then I realized, like, you're one person trying to take care of 50 cats, you're insane, and you're not providing anybody with the quality that you think you are. And wouldn't it be better to have 10 other people helping you with 5 of these? And then they, their capacity for care is better. And so it was a transition for me too. And boy, I haven't looked back, but it was a hard pill to swallow, because the people who were helping me through this rescue process were all of the same belief that, again, everyone's bad and we're the only ones.
There is kind of a group thought process. And as we've made kind of that transformation at our organization, we make it a priority when we're doing our interviewing to really hone in on cultural based questions, so that we really want people around us that have the same belief system, so that we don't go down that road, because it can be very easy to slip back into I am the rescuer and I'm going to save everybody. I wanted to also just point out that a lot of people think that a baby, oh, this little baby kitten, it's so cute, I'm going to take it to the shelter and save it. And in shelters, those little babies are probably the most at risk, because they haven't been vaccinated. They're very vulnerable to infectious diseases. Shelters cannot claim that they're infectious disease free zones, because it's just not reality. So I heard something, and you probably can go into more detail on this. I think it was Best Friends podcast or a webinar that you recommend the community, if they find a little baby, that they take flour, I think it is, and circle the baby and see if it's moved. Are there any other tips like that, or can you get into that on what community members can do?
And I think too, I mean, everybody's first instinct, because again, we're kind-hearted people. We want to save things. We don't want to see anybody suffer. But there is a difference between these little plump, fat kittens who are warm and well cared for. They don't need our help. Their mom is doing a good job. And the little scrawny, sickly babies that have upper respiratory and they just don't look very thrifty. Those do need our help. But whenever people swoop in and try to save those little fat plump ones, mom's just out trying to find food. Like, she has to work for her milk here. And so we're not giving her that opportunity, and we feel, again, like that we have to save them. And again, we're not patient people either, right? Like, I watched them for 5 seconds. She didn't come back. Something happened, right? Again, we make up things in our mind when we don't know the answer. But I would really encourage people, wait. Go back later and check. Like, don't hover around them. Mama's not going to come back when you're standing over her babies. Like, that's scary. And just know that these cats are caring for these kittens, and we want to support the mom cats, but really we don't want to pick them up and bring them in for medical care until they're old enough for it. And that's a tough one for people to take, because they want to rescue them, but then, oh, I can't bottle feed them and I can't foster them. And so it's like, why did you stop and pick them up? I mean, you didn't actually save them. You put them in a worse situation. So I do think there's good messaging out there now, showing pictures of this is who does need help and this is who doesn't. And the more we can just keep sharing that message. Again, I was the person that I would stop every time I saw, a cat or a dog or, something running down the street. Now I'm like, that one looks like it knows where it's going, or I'm not going to worry about this one because he's not, in the middle of traffic or something. Before, I would have chased that thing into traffic trying to save it, So again, and the thing is that mom cats do such a much better job than we do. Like, I'm the worst bottle feeder, not because I don't know how to do it or don't have the desire to help them, but I'm just not a mom cat, and they don't like to drink out of the bottles. And so again, I know mom will do a much better job. Just leave them alone, put food out for mom, and then let her just, feed her own babies.
I appreciate the time that you've taken and all the work that you do. I mean, you and I don't even know, do you even have a team? You're such an amazing resource to people, and I want shelters out there everywhere to know that we have these wonderful people like you that dedicate yourself to helping shelters become better and more educated. And I think what you said when you said I was the person that did this, I think that's what we're seeing in everybody. Like, everybody that comes out and says, no, you need to do it this way, you need to do it this way. I would guarantee that at least 99.9% of those people used to do it a different way. And once you start doing things and you are enlightened, I guess, it's like there's this thing in you that you just want other people to know. Like, you want people to join you, because it feels really good when you're doing things differently.
Right. And the thing is that, I could talk cats all day long, and you're probably like, whatever, Cameron, but I promise you, if you have questions, reach out to us through Million Cat Challenge. We can connect you with your own peers. Sometimes people are like, well, I live in Idaho. I don't care what's happening in Kansas. Well, we'll find somebody else in Idaho that's doing the same thing so that you can feel connected. But honestly, these programs work everywhere. It doesn't matter if, you're in a hot climate or a cold climate, all these things still work. But again, a lot of times people like to talk to their like peers. And so we're here to help you. Million Cat Challenge does have a very small team, but we know a lot of people. And again, we'll connect you with whoever you need to talk to. And the thing I would say is, don't be afraid to try something. You can always try it. And if it doesn't work for you, which it always will, because 100 of other groups have already tried it before you, but you can always tweak it and change it later. You don't have to commit fully to it. So whether it's the community cat program or easing up on your adoption philosophies, I'm telling you, people are good, and in every capacity, they want to help. They want to help you. They want to help animals. You can help more animals and people, by joining forces with others. So I think it's really exciting.
Thank you for joining me today and being such an amazing resource for our community. You are listening to People Are Animals Too, darn it. We're talking to Cameron Moore. Cameron, just to close off, can you give the web address for Million Cat Challenge? Are there any new resources, webinars, books, anything that you've been paying attention to that you want to tell people about?
You bet. So you can always look us up at millioncatchallenge.org. We have lots of great information there. And also, you could email me if you have any questions, cameron.moore@ufl.edu. And if you aren't on the Daily Digest, that is something new that has come out during the whole COVID quarantine period. And they compile resources from all the organizations, which is really great. And it comes in one email, and you can just click the links to what you need. And I found that really, really helpful.
Yeah, Home to Home was just highlighted in the digest, which was really, really kind of fun. The team loves it when we see our information shared in different ways. Well, thank you, Cameron. I appreciate your time today, and I'm sure that you and I will be talking in the near future on cat-related issues, and I'm happy that you're here as a resource for everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you.